Hey everyone, Holly Watkins with the Arc of North Carolina. We're talking today about the importance of estate planning for parents of a child with an intellectual or developmental disability. Now, this is an extremely important topic, and I am very excited and to have Aaron Edgar joining me today to discuss this topic. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you, Holly, for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So, Aaron, why don't you take a moment and just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I own a law firm and I am the managing attorney at that law firm. And one of the things that I focus on is estate planning or planning for the future of families who have a child with an intellectual disability or developmental disability. And I have been doing this work for several years. One of the things that makes this so near and dear to my heart is that I also have a disability. I happen to be totally blind. While it is not intellectual or really developmental, I did have firsthand experience with the amount of advocacy that my parents put into my own life to make sure I had the best of everything. And I also got some firsthand experience through my own childhood of people who had children with intellectual developmental disabilities and how much harder it was for them to advocate for their children to make sure they had the best of everything. And so when I started my law practice, one of the things that I intuitively understood was that people were advocating for their children for the present but didn't have a real clear idea of how their children could live on in the future after their parents were gone and still have the ability to thrive. And also, the people didn't understand what would happen when they were gone and not able to provide for them. So that is the reason why I do what I do today.
Right. And, you and I, we talked for a little while, and I shared with you that I have a sibling with an intellectual developmental disability. And estate planning is it's a complex subject, and it brings up a lot of questions. So I wanted to walk through a few of those questions today. So let's jump in and get started. What is estate planning, and why is it important for parents who have a child with an intellectual or developmental disability, excuse me?
Absolutely. So when people hear the word estate, they automatically think of, at least a lot of people, automatically think like a huge mansion and sprawling gardens. And so people think, well, I don't have enough to engage in this process. And what the process is basically at its fundamentals, protecting the assets that you have worked so hard for so that they are given to the people that you want to provide for and take care of after you are no longer able to do so. And additionally, it involves protecting yourself and making sure that you have people on your team who are legally appointed by you to care for you and those you love when you are not able to do so, but maybe still alive. So it's about planning for your future and what will happen when you will not always be there to care for and provide for those that you love.
So, how does a parent ensure that their child is cared for when that parent may not be able to care for that child anymore?
That is a really good question. And at its most basic level, the parent decides who is the person who will love and care for my child in the way that that child is accustomed to being loved and cared for. And that is a very difficult concept to break down and understand. And this is why it is often very beneficial for a parent to have someone who is able, such as an attorney or perhaps another social advocate, or a child advocate able to break that down. What is involved in that? It's a huge question. And the
Yeah.
parent might say, well, my daughter loves my son too. I had this happen once where a parent said, my daughter, loves her brother and would make sure that he is cared for. And then there's another level, especially if a child has an intellectual or developmental disability. She may love that person and make sure that he's cared for. And is there also adequate support for the care put in place, or someone appointed to actually organize that care? Because she may be able, she may want to do it, but may have difficulty in organizing all of the things that her brother would need to be able to thrive in the future.
Right. So, talking a little bit more about assets,
Mhm.
who will care for the assets of the adult with IDD once that parent or caregiver is no longer here?
That's a very good question, and perhaps I should have said that I cannot give real legal advice, and I can give general answers that will serve to provide some guidance. So, assets can be organized in a number of different ways, and there is one fundamental thing that parents will need to make sure of. If the child is receiving Social Security benefits or SSI or Medicaid, is that that child does not have, especially if they're an adult, does not have access to the assets that they inherit. If they get access to them, then it's determined that A, they're able to manage them probably, and perhaps B, that they no longer need their benefits. And so the assets get to be packaged in, there are several different ways to do it so that the the parents appoint a trusted person or advocate to oversee those assets and make sure that they're distributed to the child so that they're not in the adult child's hands, or minor child if there's a minor involved. And so it's a trusted person, or if the parents don't know one, then an advocate or an agency may care for and manage those assets.
So you talked a little bit earlier, you gave an example with multiple siblings in a family. So if a parent has multiple children, one of which has an intellectual or developmental disability, how should that parent handle estate planning?
That's a very good question as well. Parents have come to me and said, why don't I just give my entire load of stuff? And this is not to devalue what the parent has, but a lot of times people come to me and what they have isn't organized. And so they feel like it's just a cluttered mess. Why don't I just give everything I have to my daughter, and giving the people in the previous example to my daughter, and my daughter will use it to care for my son?
Mm-hmm.
You could do that with really good intentions, but there's no guarantee that the daughter would really use it for what you intend.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're not saying that she's a bad person, but we're saying she has, I mean, if it's given to her, it's hers. Um, and so, in order to provide for your son, the parents want to provide for their son, the probably best way to make sure that that's done is to package those assets for him, his share of them, into some kind of trust arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
There are several different types, um, but there's one that's called a special needs trust, and it ensures and is written in such a way that the assets are packaged in this trust arrangement so that someone else manages those assets for him and he doesn't touch them, so that it doesn't so that the government doesn't believe that he has enough money to pay for his health care and enough competence to manage money for himself, if indeed he has been determined not to be able to do that. Um, and there are other arrangements. So that may not be the best one for everyone, but it's a common one.
So, if someone wants to set up an estate plan, how do they do that?
People can be very overwhelmed,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of information on the internet. There are several really good sort of clearinghouses for people with family members with disabilities. They have a lot of information. And one of the things that those sites tend to tell you, and that I will also say, is that it's to a parent's benefit to consult with an attorney who specializes, or I should say focuses, on setting up these types of estate plans and works with families in that particular situation, who is experienced in planning for people with IDD. Um, and the reason that I say this is, you know, you may try to do this online, and some people do, but what ends up happening is it doesn't get put together the way that you would want. And online, there is no planning service online that I know of that takes into account the various federal and possibly state requirements necessary to make sure these plans are set up correctly.
Mm.
So I would say the best thing to do is to consult with an attorney who's experienced in these areas and get an idea of what is necessary, and work with an attorney very closely to set up a plan that is right for you. And one caveat to that is that if I were planning for my special needs child, I would want to consult with an attorney who really cares about you and your family and is agreeable, who asks you a lot of questions about your family arrangement and your child, and gets to know you and your family, and who is agreeable to setting up a plan that is really customized for you. I've seen a lot of these sort of trust arrangement type plans, and the trusts are very sort of boilerplate. They're good,
Mhm.
they're compliant with the law, but they don't take the family into account. And clients
Right.
like to feel appreciated, and that
Right.
child should be appreciated. That special needs child has a voice and has likes and dislikes, just like your other children and the other people important to you. And so it's important to find an attorney who not only knows the law but also wants to know you.
Absolutely. Great, great advice. And, we could talk for another couple of hours about this. As I said, when I talked to you, one question led to another and led to another. So I want to thank you, Erin Edgar, for taking some time to talk with me today.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this, to talk with you. I realize how caring you are, and it's my great privilege to be able to share this information with people who might not know about it.
So we know that parents may have a lot of questions after watching this video about estate planning. You'll find a resource in the description below this video. So that's all for today. Again, thank you, Erin. Keep coming back to our YouTube channel and visit our website, arcnc.org.